Good day, everybody. Welcome to Honest Storytellers Night. My name is Josh, and I'm joined here with my co-host.
Hello, I'm Nathan.
And I just want to say, how are you doing, mate? It's been a week. What have you been up to?
Well, obviously it was Mother's Day over the weekend, so I took my mum out to this nice Italian restaurant local to me in Black, which was quite nice. There's nice food there, so that was quite good. And the usual work, YouTube, videos. But I found the videos I'm doing at the moment are actually doing quite well, the life simulators, so I'm getting a lot more of those ridiculous ones going, because they're quite fun and they're quite short. It's good.
Yeah, I was looking with my girlfriend, I think yesterday morning. I was going for some of my stuff, and then we're talking about live streaming. And I was like, Jesus Christ, those views.
I know, but it's mad, isn't
it? Jesus Christ.
That's one of the reasons I'm doing it, because they're nice and quick to do, and they're really popular at the moment. I was tempted to do that new one that everyone's doing. That's basically the Breaking Bad simulator. Everyone's doing that at the moment, so it's maybe I need to do that one. That looks quite good. So what have you been up to?
Well, when I'm home, there is. Oh yeah, I've not been. I've been college end the day on Tuesday. I had time in advance for the days I've been off. And yeah, it's just been chilling out. Mother's Day was yesterday, of course, and I didn't do much because my mum's up in North Wales and I'm in Bristol.
Yeah.
But other than that, I've been preparing, which I was about to say, I've been preparing some multiplayer games in my head that we have in common, and I think now that I've got the full lot of PlayStation Plus, maybe we could play a retro game together, something that is more of an arcadey type.
Oh yeah.
Yep, something that is fun, that would bring out laughs, something that will not be too lengthy, something that will be short, sweet, and can be done within like 5 episodes.
That sounds good. What are you thinking of?
Yep, that back. Oh,
we'll discuss it then. Cool.
Tell you. Yeah, I can't tell you on top of my head, but we'll discuss it when I get back.
Yeah, sounds good. Cool.
Anyways, today's topic, mate. I have. We've spoken in previous episodes, and why not just focus on it today? The title, as I would call it, is Pros and Cons Between Computer Games, Board Games, and Tabletop.
Right.
So we'll talk about, first of all, we'll talk about computer games and the console wars between them, such as PlayStation against Xbox, and then against Nintendo, Sega, and then which ones have died out because of the console wars, etc.
Cool.
So, what consoles do you play, mate?
All of them.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
all of them.
Do you want to explain?
Well, because
do you want to explain to the people
have them all. So I'm currently on my desk, as well as my 2 PCs, because I've got a streaming PC and a gaming PC. I've also got a PlayStation 5, Xbox Series S, because I couldn't be bought to buy the X, and a Nintendo Switch, all on my desk plugged into the computer. Behind me on my shelf, I also have the original Xbox, the original PlayStation, PlayStation 2, GameCube, and then downstairs I got a PS4 as well. And yeah, I've got way too many because I've been, gaming for so long. And I do have a Sega Mega Drive and a Sinclair Spectrum 48K, Amiga A500, and Amiga CD32. Yeah, I got loads of stuff all over the place. Oh, I've got Dreamcast as well, and a Nintendo Wii. Yeah, I kind of collect stupid stuff like that because, I've been gaming since gaming started, so I'd have it all, wouldn't I?
That's true. I haven't kept them, but I have played the original Sega Mega Drive and Nintendo.
Yeah.
PlayStation 1 all the way through to PlayStation 5.
Oh, I do have a
I've
3 as
played
well.
and the 3, okay. I have. I just thought you'd throw that one in because you forgot. It's
And
a
an
very
Xbox
forgettable
One.
console.
That's in the bedroom.
Yeah. I've played the original Xbox, the Xbox 360, and both versions of Xbox One. I haven't played the Fridge Freezer yet.
Yeah.
But I don't own any Xbox, as you know, mate. I'm a primarily PlayStation player.
Yeah.
I love PlayStation. They've always been focused on solo games, unlike Xbox, which everyone knows is for the multiplayer experience, whilst PlayStation is mainly single player
A lot of it
experience,
depends
which I enjoy.
which one. So if you look at the more kind of Japanese ones, then yeah, because it's a lot of that is the single player RPGs and that sort of thing, which Xbox never really had. It wasn't really till games like Halo came out that they started to kind of focus a lot more on the multiplayer. But yeah,
I more or so meant the like before they both consoles and both companies announced that they're not going against it for no more with the PlayStation only games, Xbox only games. It was very out there that PlayStation had God of War, The Last of Us, Spider-Man, basically solo player, whilst Xbox had Halo, Call of Duty, Forza, Gran Turismo, and other games that
and
you
FIFA
can do
and
a
all the
lot of
sports
multiplayer
games
stuff with.
and all that.
FIFA,
I know they have it all on PlayStation, but a lot of that tends to focus a lot more on the Xbox than it through
on
Microsoft and all
multiplayer,
that. Yeah, they've always been kind of like sports and shooting games and all that sort of thing they focused on. Whereas the PlayStation, because of the Japanese influence, is a lot more single player, a lot more story driven, which I think Xbox isn't as story driven as PlayStation.
I know the only fairly decent franchise that they've got that is somewhat very good with story is Halo. But then again, I still think Halo, as of recency, a lot of PlayStation games outvote Halo.
The latest Halo wasn't great. It didn't come out very good. When it first came out, there were loads of issues with it. It wasn't that story driven. It felt like a multiplayer game you play by yourself. It didn't feel like that whole single player experience where you're going through like an impressive storyline. Because the original Halo is still one of my all time favorite games. The storyline was good, the combat was good. It was just a well put together game. And they've kind of gone away with that. The newest one is they've kind of half-heartedly put a single player campaign in there ready for multiplayer. But then when they released it, you couldn't even do multiplayer anyway. So what was the point? That was a bit silly.
Exactly.
A little bit silly.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I do like the odd Xbox game, but with me being brought up as a PlayStation player with the likes of Metal Gear Solid, Resident Evil, then we've got some of the early shooters like Red War and Hitman, early Hitman games as well.
But Hitman was always like on other places as well, because I remember having it on like PC and things. I remember I had this a really weird controller that's basically like a glove, and you have this like pillar you put on your desk. It would have all sensors, and you basically have this kind of like a glove, and it would have inputs for each finger. And one of the first games for that was Hitman, but I could never figure out how to use the damn thing. It was dreadful, because that's all you had was just your fingers and your thumb. You could like move your joints and it would do things, but they didn't give you very good instructions like how it would actually interact with things. It was crap. I still got it somewhere in the cupboard. It was awful. Could have been so good, but no, and that was one of the package with that. But yeah, it's a little bit weird. But to be honest, I thought why I've kind of stuck with having all the different consoles. One, I started with the very basic games on the BBC Micro and the Sinclair Spectrum, where games were fairly basic. There was no such thing as multiplayer for quite a while until later. We had stuff like the Amiga and PCs where you could link them up with like a null modem cable. And that's something where you physically have to link up two computers together. There was no internet. You'd have to physically get two computers together, or two, Commodore Amiga, we did it a few times, and you'd physically link them together. So the first games we played like that was Days of Thunder. The racing game based on the Tom Cruise movie. That was one of the first multiplayer games of that kind that we played. Obviously, we had a lot of split screen and stuff like that, or you take turns and play them. There were a lot of games like that. We'd have 2-player take turns, like Mario and things like that, where you'd have player 1 and player 2, which is why the whole Mario and Luigi thing, because player 1 would be red and player 2 would be green, and that was kind of Mario and Luigi, wasn't it? Even though they looked exactly the same originally. So we had a lot of that sort of thing, but it was mainly the kind of split screen and things like that, which wasn't always great. You couldn't do sort of deathmatch or anything like that. That didn't exist back then because you couldn't do it because you're both looking at the same screen. You could just cheat. But it was really frustrating because it was before the days of like proper joysticks and stuff. And you got 2 people trying to use a couple of keys sharing a keyboard. And when you're looking at like the original ZX Spectrums, the keyboard was tiny. It was a tiny little thing.
I remember doing a retro week with my primary, and I remember seeing 2 people going ham on the keyboard.
Yeah.
Like, no,
it's tiny. It's like it's the size of a mouse mat, if not smaller. And it's like, how the hell do you play 2 people on that? Plus, the graphics were so dreadful. They had some ridiculous games. The thing is, back then, you didn't complete games because they weren't designed to be completed half the time. Some of them you could, but some of them didn't end. I remember playing like Gauntlet, if you remember that from the arcades. Where you get like the 4 characters, the dwarf, the barbarian, the magic user, the elf, and all that. Yeah. It's like the 4 characters of all the different abilities. Although the barbarian would throw axes, and it was just like, well, this is a bit stupid because they're all exactly the same, really. And it was just like a little dungeon crawler, and you go around all the dungeons and all that. I remember getting that on the Spectrum and playing that with like friends and so on. We got like the deeper dungeons, which is the expansion for it. We got to like level 250, and the game just kind of stops. You don't get any end. It just ran out of levels. It's a weird experience.
Yeah, I remember playing Golden Axe with my dad on the original Sega Mega Drive, and it was we went all the way through, and it just went black screen and just white noise in the background. It's like, oh,
it was weird.
And he just told me, he's like, we finished it.
Yeah, because they didn't really expect people to play stuff for that long, especially if you look at things like a lot of the older ones where you didn't have save files. Like look at the original PlayStation. If you didn't have a memory card, you couldn't save anything. So back in the day when they first came out, you'd rent one from like Blockbuster. You'd actually rent a console and some games, but you wouldn't get a memory card. So I remember renting Street Fighter when it first came out on like the original PlayStation. Rent it, and we'd keep the console on the whole time. Not Street Fighter, no, it was Tekken we were playing when that first came out. It's been Tekken, yeah, Tekken. And we're playing that, and it's like we had to keep the console on the whole weekend that we had it, because if we turned it off, you lose all the characters that you've just got. So you'd have to keep it on the whole time and not play anything else. It was a nightmare.
That does sound like a pain in the backside.
Completely, it was ridiculous. But you had it a lot with Spectrum games and so on. It was, the save files were fairly basic, the games were fairly basic. And you got bored after about 5 minutes of, 5 and 10 minutes of playing exactly the same thing over and over and over. The levels were changed. Most of them were platformers. You're just running left to right, and it'd just be constantly the same nonsense. And you just get bored of it. It'd be another 20 minutes to load the next game. Oh God, it's a nightmare back then.
I mean, it's not changed that much since. It's still a bit.
Yeah, a lot of things.
It is a lot. A lot of things is a bit could be better, but then again, I reckon we're hitting prime gaming time now at the moment. There are a lot more next gen games announced that look very decent.
I hope so. The only trouble is my concern with a lot of it, with all the crunch time and everything else, a lot of the time they just rush to get things out and then fix them later, which does my head in.
Cyberpunk is a great example.
So many examples of those, like
No Man's Sky.
Exactly, but
beat you to
No Man's Sky started off horrendous, and it's now become one of the best games available on any console, including VR.
Yeah,
it's like the new expansion they just released this week, last week now, Relics, where you get to do some paleontology and you dig up old bones, and then you can arrange them how you want into all different dinosaurs and put them on display. And they've added loads of other little enhancements and stuff. And it's great because they introduce these new concepts and these new things you can do. So they then have an expedition to teach you all the new things are there, rather than just going, there's loads of new things, go and explore. It's like, right, we've now got these like mini missions you can do. It's usually in 5 parts. So say you do a part an hour or something, you can do it quicker, you can do it longer, but say it's like 5 or 6 hours of a new storyline that just teaches you how to do these new things, where the new things are, what you can do on a completely new save separate to your other one. And then all of this stuff you can get money for, and take some of the stuff from that and put it on your main save, and there'll be all different rewards like new weapons and new armor pieces. They don't make any effect in game. Most of it is just cosmetic. If you get all that, maybe new ships, and it's great to have all these other things to go for. And then you go back to the main game and you can do whatever you want. No Man's Sky has a pretty open universe. You can go wherever, do whatever. It's nice every couple of months to get a kind of focused thing to do. It's absolutely amazing.
It keeps the game fresh, which a lot of games lack these days. Prime example, I hate slating this game now, but Destiny, they don't keep it fresh.
No.
They just, you've got this to do, and then it comes too repetitive. Like, we ain't had enough. We've had too much time to do this.
They've done it too much lately with the exotic quests. You get an exotic quest, it's like, oh good, this will be the end of the story. No, you have to do the same quest 5 times to finish the story. It's like, where's the fun in that?
Well, I mean, the shotgun one that we tried to do, you had to do it 10 times to complete the season.
Yeah, but we couldn't even finish it because it was glitched. So it's
exactly, and we haven't gone back since.
It's so frustrating that game was so good.
That was our first time trying it as well, to come back to Destiny, and then we just had that glitch and we haven't touched it since, and I don't blame us. The damn game has let everyone down, and it's Bungie to blame because they're too hyper focused with Sony on Marathon.
Yeah, that's the trouble. They're focusing on a new game that may not do very well and may not be very good, instead of focusing. Destiny was so good. I think back to some of the times we played it and the levels we're playing and the storylines, how amazing it was. Some of the exotic quests, the first time we did the Presage, when we're going into abandoned ship, that was some of the best times we've had on Destiny. That was just an exotic quest. It's one of my favorites. The storyline was engaging. It was atmospheric. Everything about it worked. And they've just not rekindled that at all. They do like half-hearted, here's this. And the biggest bugbear I have with any quest line in Destiny, you're speaking to somebody, you're standing there speaking to them, they teleport out. Then you have to go to the radio to talk to them. It's like, I was just talking to you, mate. Why do I have to go into a different room to talk to you again? And then go back the other way. It's just like, oh, for God's sake, why am I going from place to place just to speak to the same bloody person and give them heads of something? It's like,
we had it bad with Ido. Ido. We went to go speak to her. Then she disappears in front of us. We go to the radar where she is, which is the radar is quite literally next to her. And then when we come out, we then have to go and scan something. Ido then speaks to us, and then we have to go back to Ido to speak to her. Like, why did she fuck off in the first place? Why did she just go? Why not just stay there?
They can all teleport anywhere. They can transmat wherever they want to. So why don't they come to us for a change? Just stand in one room. They want to talk to you? Come here then. Like, why do we have to keep going to them?
Yeah, exactly.
That is the biggest problem with it, and then it becomes so repetitive. And it's just kill 2,000 of this one thing, kill another 2,000 of this one, and that's just all you're doing. Yeah, I know it's a looter shooter, but it's always the same things over and over and over, and it's just, oh my God. And then
we love you, Bungie, but pull your finger.
And the trouble is, you do it then, and the rewards are pointless.
That's the worst part. You do all of that grinding for that.
Yeah. Oh, look, it's a new weapon that I'm never going to use because I don't like shotguns. It's like, and it's the same as the last shotgun I had. There's no difference. Oh, look, it's got a different perk that I'm not going to use, or perk that you can't get.
Anyways, mate.
We could have a whole episode of Bungie bashing, but let's not do that.
Bungie bashing, yeah. Let's swiftly move on to not tabletop, but board games. What board game do you recognize when people describe the rules, stuff like that? So what's one of your favorites?
That's debatable because people always cover their own bloody rules for stuff. Now, one of my all-time favorite games, which is ridiculous, is Monopoly. I have about 20 different versions of Monopoly. I love Monopoly just because it's ridiculous, it's fun, it's easy to get into, it can last hours or it can be really quick. And there's so many different versions of it, but people always have weird, it's like playing Uno. People always have these other rules that they've learned with their families that are non-existent anywhere else apart from that household. And it's frustrating then when you play it with somebody else and they make it the rules. They do that with almost anything, but with Monopoly, they've done some really good additions. Like there's the Star Wars ones, Star Trek ones, Marvel, you name it, any franchise, they've done a version of it. But some of them, instead of just having... you've got the...
original Marvel comics, like old Monopoly, and that is one of my favorites because it's like you're buying out Iron Man, you're buying out Captain America, and once you've got the Avengers, for example, the original cast of Avengers, you can then publish it and you get money over time every time you pass go. Because you're selling.
That's what I enjoy about the different version of it. So, the Simpsons one, the Pokemon one was quite good because if you landed on a score with somebody else, you had to have a Pokemon battle and like roll the dice and that sort of thing. So that was quite interesting as you go around and you could do that. The Lord of the Rings one, I still think is one of the best versions.
Because
it's got the one ring that slowly moves around the board. One of the dice has the Eye of Sauron, and if you roll that, the ring moves on one. When the ring gets to Mount Doom, the game ends. So it's the only version of Monopoly that has an actual definitive end to the game. It doesn't just go on forever and ever and ever. There's an actual end to it, which is what I quite enjoy. But I've always been a big fan of board games. Love them.
Yeah, likewise. At times, I generally think, because of the interactivity, I generally sit there and think board games and tabletop are 10 times better than computer games.
Oh, in many, many ways. There are disadvantages, but we'll come to that in a minute.
Yeah, which is why I stated at the beginning it's pros and cons. We're taking our conversations, and then towards the end, we'll debunk what we talked about.
There's not as many board games. I feel like board games have they've died away over the past couple of decades. When I was a kid, that's all we had, board games. We didn't have video games.
I mean, my favorite board game is Risk.
Yeah.
I love Risk. You could say it counts as tabletop, but at the same time, it's in many ways completely different to tabletop. It's mainly dice throwing and strategic movements. It's not constantly getting the ruler out or getting your health sheet or your point sheet or your entire story layout. You don't need that. It's literally the roll of the dice.
Yeah.
That's why I think Risk is more of a board game than tabletop.
Yeah, it kind of blurs the lines. There's a couple of others, like things like Hero Quest and Space Crusade and all of those. They blur the line.
More tabletop. Yeah, they're tabletop because you have line of sight.
Yeah, I don't call it tabletop in that way. I'd say that's more leaning towards a board game because it has a definitive set of rules, a definitive play area, and a booklet. You have to do this, do this. It's not as kind of open. Whereas tabletop, I see that more of a kind of, you use your imagination a lot more for a lot of table stuff.
Yeah,
it's a lot about imagination and seeing things how they would be, on armies and the terrain and that sort of thing. Whereas like Space Crusade and Hero Quest, they're very much, this is what it is. It's all laid out. You can see everything. You can see the doors. You can see the stuff in the rooms. It's kind of all laid out for you, so you don't have to really use your imagination because it's all kind of there. So it kind of bridges the gap between the two.
I mean, a lot of people, I'm not sure if it's true, but my dad said it is true, and I kind of understand why my dad says it because it made sense. Space Crusade, when we're talking about tabletop and board game now, in particular, Space Crusade and Warhammer. Warhammer is set timeline. It's its set timeline, but my dad says Space Crusade is thousands and thousands of years into the deep future of Warhammer.
What, of Warhammer
Space Crusade
40,000?
That's what my dad said. It could be counted as future.
Well, the future it's in the same timeline as Warhammer 40k. It is a Warhammer 40,000 game. Hero Quest isn't quite Warhammer. It's kind of a separate entity. But you can go back to like Talisman and things like that they developed before that, and they did quite a few board games. They did some silly little board games with like orcs and goblins and all that sort of thing. I had a few of those. They did a lot of different things back in the day. But Space Crusade is 40k. It's just in the 40k universe. I'm not. It's kind of weird to try and put it where it actually is in that universe because
there's so much similarities.
Well, it is part of 40k because you've got the Space Marine chapters. It is an actual Space Marine chapter they're using it.
Yeah,
it's like was it the Iron Fist? I can't remember which one. But they had a few different ones. You could be because the different colors, like different chapters and so on. And it was Gene Stealers and everything else. And Chaos. So it's hard to kind of go, it's at this point in Warhammer 40,000 because Warhammer 40,000 is one of those things that keeps evolving throughout the years, and they change the model ranges every couple of years and change the rules. So it's kind of at the beginning of Warhammer 40,000. It's not going to be past that because you look at the models and the equipment, it's early days of Warhammer 40,000. So it's probably not long after the Horse Heresy. It's not going to be set past it. It's going to be a little bit after the Horse Heresy. You look at things like the Chaos Dreadnought. Chaos Dreadnoughts don't look like that anymore. It's more like an Ed 209 type of thing. It's a very early one. And the same look at the Space Marine armor. They got some have got the pointy heads and all that sort of thing. So it's the very early days of Warhammer 40,000. Is the way I look at it. So it's some point after the Horse Heresy, obviously, because once again the armor it's at that point where the Emperor's dead but not dead, dying and then coming back and all that. So it's at that kind of point in the Warhammer 40,000 history. But if you look at Warhammer 40,000, the timeline doesn't matter. It's either before the Horse Heresy or after it. There's not a huge amount of difference really at that point, apart from when you introduce different races. So obviously, originally we didn't have Tyranids, we didn't have the Eldar, we didn't have Dark Eldar, we didn't have Tau. So there's a lot of that wasn't there at that time. So it's before those alien races came into it. So the timeline will be there before we had the Tau and everybody else join in, because back then it was fairly basic. You had Orcs, Space Marines, Elves, Space Elves. That was really about it. We did have squats back in the day, and then they got rid of them and then brought them back now. And you didn't have a lot. You had Gene Stealers, but you didn't have the whole Tyranids. You just had Gene Stealers, but they were mainly for Space Hulk, is why they were developed, to kind of cash in on the whole alien kind of stuff. So that's where Gene Stealers came from, and then they expanded it and got Tyranids and everything else. So yeah, very early days of Warhammer 40,000, whereas Hero Quest isn't really set in the Warhammer world. It is more of a Dungeons and Dragons inspired game. It's not really set, although it's got orcs and all that kind of thing. It's not really based on Warhammer, because Warhammer is big armies and that sort of thing. So it's not based on that as such. So I would call it a kind of a D&D inspired in the Warhammer kind of style.
What about tabletop? Because with the whole, like when you mentioned earlier, and I agreed that board games are on their way out, they're dying out, and we say that hand on heart.
Yeah.
Board games are sadly dying out, but the only thing that's keeping them alive, in my opinion, is all the tabletop games at the moment. There's been so many different ones, like the ones that I play. You've got the Alien vs Predator and Marine ones that I play, Resident Evil 1, 2 and 3. I'm currently almost done with my Resident Evil 1 playthrough on tabletop.
Doom ones, there's Evil Dead, there's so many different zombie ones. There's a nice zombie one I used to play, I can't remember what it's called. Once again, a lot of these tabletop ones, some of them have set boards, some of them don't. The zombie one I used to play, it's basically you get like a couple of bags of zombies, and that was really about it. There wasn't much else to it. But there's a lot of that kind of thing. It's because it has like the cult following, and it's kind of a little bit different. Board games these days, to be honest, if you're looking at putting aside Monopoly, because that's just something of its own kind of, Monopoly is kind of separate to all other types of board games. Really, it's kind of its own type. But you look at board games these days, and they're generally quite cheap and nasty. You can pick them up really cheaply. They're very cheaply made. The playing pieces are crap. We look at stuff like back in the day, Frustration, and things like that. They don't make games like that anymore. They make them all cheap, and you don't get all the plastic playing pieces. They're all cardboard cutouts and cardboard things. Look at stuff like Cluedo. Most of that now is just cardboard cutouts, and it's like, well, that's not quite the same thing, is it? It doesn't feel as good.
No.
Back in the day, we had some weird games. I got one called Dracula's Castle, and you had to try and get out of the castle. These playing pieces, and Dracula would go around the board if you roll a certain dice, and there'd be like certain sections of the board you could go to at any time because there's candles, so it'd be light, so Dracula couldn't go there, and he'd capture you, and you'd have to wear this bat mask. There's all sorts of weird stuff. There's loads of weird games like that back in the day, but they don't do the kind of wacky and wonderful games like that anymore. It's just kind of the bog standard Snakes and Ladders and the classic ones, and board games just aren't kind of there anymore, are they? People don't consider it. It's just the classic ones we grew up with that we then introduce our kids to. But there doesn't seem like there's anything else.
That's the only way that board games will survive now is a nostalgia trip.
Apart from, as you said, the tabletop ones, which are kind of board games. Some of them are more board gamey than tabletop, but it's kind of tabletop.
And then we've got the role-playing type as well, haven't we?
Yeah, and Dungeons and Dragons and classic D&D type of stuff. And obviously it's
a nice, it was a wide spectrum. That's why it's surviving. There's one person might like the role playing, one person might like just a straight up close as hell board game as possible, and then you can meet in the middle where that is tabletop. You can get terrain and you can make a character list or character story and then put different weapons on your characters. That's the in between. That's tabletop, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely, because there's so many different ways. Because you look at that like tabletop wargaming, tabletop role playing. So there's so many different types of it, and I think it's been good to have shows like Big Bang Theory have kind of brought that into mainstream a little bit more, and people are going, oh, that looks quite good, especially when they have like the episode they're playing D&D and it's like all the famous actors and William Shatner and everybody else that actually do this. And there are a bunch of proper celebrities like that do actually have these leads, and they all play Dungeons and Dragons. I remember seeing an interview the other day. It was Karen from Daredevil.
Okay, yeah.
And she was teaching Punisher how to play Dungeons and Dragons and telling him all about it. It's just like, what a world we live in. It's like, those two, obviously, co-stars, and she's telling him all about Dungeons and Dragons, how it works, and like the different types of characters, and why you'd create a character like this, and not just have like all the best. He's like, well, why wouldn't you choose a character that just has all the perfect stats? And then she starts explaining about different characteristics and why you'd want to do this against that, and why it'd be more interesting and more realistic. And it was quite an interesting conversation. It's good to see, so-called, in quotes, famous people that are not afraid to go, oh yeah, I'm a nerd, I like all this. And it's because back when I was a kid, Dungeons and Dragons was very much kind of like, the weird kids in the corner. If you'd watch like Stranger Things and you see their Dungeons and Dragons club, that's what it was like when I was growing up. Shunned by the rest of society, and you just kind of like playing little dank areas in like the library. We used to have like the upstairs in the library we commandeered for a while for our Dungeons and Dragons club. And that's kind of what it was. It was kind of on the side of everybody else. And most of them like, that's a bit weird. Oh, that's, devil worshipping and all that. And there were movies about it. There was just one years ago, I can't remember what it's called. It was an early Tom Hanks movie. And he was playing Dungeons and Dragons, and he was like, it's very odd thing. And he started to kind of believe it was all real. And it was just like, and they all got lost in like a cave. So it was very strange. But that's what people kind of thought about it, that it was kind of a little bit evil and a little bit strange. And it's nice to see now that people are seeing it as just another way to interact with friends. Well, let's have a Dungeons and Dragons night, let's have a board game night. And it's kind of become accepted into society a lot more than it used to be. And that's, good, sometimes bad, I guess, as well. The other thing we should probably add into this when we're talking about these kind of interactions with people are the collectible card games.
Oh shoot! Yeah.
So that's also a big part of this, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, this isn't my area of expertise. I've never really liked the collectible card game side of things because it starts arguments.
It depends.
Starts people stealing and stuff.
No, it depends. I mean, collectible card games, not for the collecting, for the gaming. So there's a difference. So you get people that collect Pokemon cards because they want to make money. As somebody, I didn't really get that much into Pokemon. Tried it a little bit. I tried Vampire Masquerade, which I quite enjoyed. There was a Star Wars one for a while. But Magic the Gathering is one I really, really enjoyed. And I've got a lot of Magic cards. But that was all about collecting them for your deck. So you have all the different ones. So it's all about Magic and so on. So you have different cards that you try and summon. But to summon it, you have to use mana. So to get mana, you have to have a certain number of lands. So there's different colors. So you obviously get, green with forests, red for mountains, kind of black for swamps, blue for water, and that sort of thing. So you have these different elements, and you'd kind of have to choose which elements you wanted to use, because certain ones will work well with others. And the more elements you've got, the harder it's going to be, because you have to then draw the lands from your deck and basically tap them for energy to bring out your cards to defeat the other person. Because the whole point is, you're like a god, the other person's god, and you have to attack the other person with your army. So, say you get an orc out, If he doesn't have any defense, you can take his life points each turn and just attack them. So then he has to build up a defense, so you can only attack the other cards first before you can get to them. And that's the whole thing. You have to reduce your opponent to 0 points, life points, and that's it. So you come up with a deck, and it's obviously all shuffled, so you'll know what's in your deck, but you won't know the order it's in. So you'll draw randomly each turn another card, and it could be a land that will give you, mana, magic you can use. It might be, a character you can bring out. The more powerful it is, the longer it's going to take you to get the man together. So it's all sorts of stuff like that. But it meant when you bought the booster packs, you never knew what you're going to get. So you'll have a couple of lands. You might have a really good card. You might have some crap cards. You might have duplicates. So that's when you kind of get to the whole collecting side of it, because you're collecting to make your deck better for going against somebody else. And if there's a small group of you, what we used to, a few of us, is we'd all have different ones. So I'd usually have like green, red, and black, because after I have black, then I have the swamps, and you'd all have like different combinations. So nobody would have the same. So nobody would have exactly the same deck. You'd have some of the same cards, but everyone would have something different. You'd try and then build your deck to combat the other people, and that's where the collectible card games become good. It's like Warhammer 40,000, Warhammer. You collect the models and build your army. So one, you've got a strong army they're comfortable with, but also you try and build it to combat what you're going to be against. And it's very same. The only difference is using cards instead of models, really. Very similar sort of thing, but it's good fun. I quite enjoyed it, but now it's got so big, and there are so many different sets now. There's probably 30 or 40 different sets, and I've got some of like the original ones from back in the 90s, so I've probably got some fairly rare ones at this point.
I mean, all I know is the Pokemon stuff. Then you've got Magic of the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh. I do like Yu-Gi-Oh. I can't lie. I did collect a little bit of Yu-Gi-Oh, but then I just kind of sold them all.
Yeah, but a lot of that is because there's a cartoon to go with it, so it's easy to get into. So the Blue Eyes White Dragon and all of that, because you see it. It's like with the Pokemon. You see the TV show, you play the video game, so the cards then make sense. And it is the same. You play the cards, same, but people don't tend to play Pokemon as often as they just want to collect them.
Well, my ultimate question to you then is, out of the lot of different ways of gaming that we've just spoken about, what is your go-to, what is your preferred, and what is the one that you recommend for other people?
Well, I'd say we probably need to cover Warhammer 40,000, because we haven't really said what that's about, the kind of tabletop wargaming side. We've kind of briefly gone to Dungeons and Dragons, and we haven't really, we've gone a little bit into that, where you have a single character that has, different stats, strength, charisma, luck, and so on, and you go through a dungeon to try and get to whatever the end goal is that the dungeon master's put in place for the storyline. So you have to rescue the princess, kill the bad guy or whatever else in a dungeon, and defeat all monsters in the way, and get treasure and get better equipment and buy and sell stuff. A lot like the video games we have. So just kind of mention what that is briefly. And then obviously the tabletop wargaming says like the card games you collect a big army to fight another army. That's the basic gist of it. And obviously you have to buy the models, which is the heart-wrenching part, because they're so damn expensive now, and hopefully put them together and paint them, and not just have legs on a base.
I've got him back into, by the way. Yeah. I did 2. I'll send you them now, but I did 2 Necromunda ones. Yeah. That's the board game, the tabletop game that I primarily play, which is Necromunda. Yeah. But I have a gang called Goliath Gangs, and I'll send you them over
so just
now.
In case I'm reading, so Necromunda is based in like the Warhammer 40,000 universe. And rather than having a full army, you'll have like a gang, and it'll be in like a destroyed building or factory complex, and you'll have objectives both ways, and you have to then try and defeat your opponents, either by slaughtering them or getting the objective and getting more points. And then, if I'm right, because it's been a while since I played Necromunda, you keep the same gang from game to game if you're doing like a campaign, but people will get injured, you'll lose people that get killed and so on, and you have to get new equipment and build them up and get them armor. So it's kind of like you level, instead of leveling up one character like Dungeons and Dragons, you have a whole gang that you level up and get better. Because I used to play one called Gorka Morka, which is the same sort of thing but with orcs. And that was good fun because
Yeah.
at the end of every battle, anyone that got killed in battle wouldn't necessarily get killed. And you find out what happens to them at the end of the battle. Did they recover? Did they lose an arm? Did they lose an eye? Did they lose an egg? You know, a leg or whatever else? And it would then change their ability for the next game. So if they lose an eye,
Which is what Necromunda has
yeah,
done as of recency. It's like you have 6 different
Hmm.
outcomes. Each scenario is completed, and they have random scenarios randomly
Yeah.
picked. And you roll the dice, and if it lands on a 5, you're like, for example, my Goliath revolver shooter, he would lose the ability to use his left
Yeah.
arm, but he'll still have his left arm for melee. He just can't shoot with it.
Yeah.
And then he has to use his weak right arm to shoot, which will bring a minus
On you
on
to hit rolls and so on.
your shooting and stuff. But melee, you've got a +1 because you've got 1 melee and 1 shooting. That's what Necromunda's done, and I do know I can answer the whole Necromunda being part of Warhammer. On the older Necromunda boxes, it did say the underbelly of the beloved 40k world.
Yeah.
It's the crime area. It's underbelly, underworld, full of crime and
Yeah,
grit.
exactly.
That's
On
what Necromunda is to
any of the
Warhammer.
planets of the Imperium, it could just be, you know, on the wastelands and underneath an abandoned city. That's kind of what Necromunda. And the same sort of thing with Gorkamorka. It was just, you know, random orc worlds, and you're trying to, you know, make your way and collect more teeth and become the biggest, baddest knob that you can. Yeah, knob is obviously noble, short for. But it's quite good because of the way orcs work. You'd have orc doctors, so you could pay a certain amount of money and see if you could repair these people. But they may not get what they expected. So, you know, they may go in with a gammy leg and suddenly get an eye implant or something else. So it was always kind of hit and miss what would happen. Or they'd botch it up and you'd lose the character. So there's lots of that kind of thing. Then you'd have to like recruit another character, and that would spend, you know, more money that you've gained during the battle. So that I always found was quite good fun because you could build it up, and as long as you had like a small group of people, so you wouldn't be against just the same one person all the time. It was quite good fun because you know, have these characters and you'd have all the battle scars and you'd have stories about them. And it's really good. Same sort of thing a lot of us do, like Warhammer 40,000, which instead of having a small gang, you'll have, you know, 20, 30, 40 models on there. But there'll always be the 1 or 2 models that always do something heroic. It is just, you know, like all Dungeons and Dragons and so on, it's rolling the dice. And the dice will determine the chance that something's going to happen. If somebody's going to shoot straight, if they're going to hit someone, if a bullet going towards them will bounce off their armor or miss them, or if they are wounded, how badly they wounded. So it's all, you know, chance with dice. But saying that, when you get a character, you know, he'll run across the battlefield, he'll be like murdering people, and he'll do the unbelievable thing that you only had a minor chance, and you roll a 6, and they, you know, knock off the head of some big champion. It's like you then have these characters, then you name them, and they have all these stories about them. You know, this guy's done this. You know, it's a little piece of metal or plastic that you've painted up and built, and you just rolled some dice. But you get so into the narrative of it. It's great fun. It's all about imagination. I love it.
Very fun. I generally do prefer the interactiveness of board games and tabletop and card games in general.
Yeah.
So even something simple as Rummy or Gym Rummy, it's the interactivity I really enjoy. With computer games, it's like you've got a couple hours before you either get a headache or conversations run dry. Before that point, someone may or may not have made the excuse that they need to go, when in theory they've turned themselves offline even.
Yeah.
And or you get the people like me and you who never run out of anything to talk about.
That's why we started this.
This, exactly. We never run out. But then we've got people who run out and dip from the online experience.
Well, I think that's the trouble with society in general. People have lost the ability to just talk to each other. So, you know, I got on holiday a lot with my family, you know, my parents and my son. You know, my parents are a little bit older. My dad was just 70 this past a couple of weeks, this beginning of this month, and you know, he's the one that introduced me to wargaming, Dungeons and Dragons. He used to do that, you know, years ago, all Dungeons and Dragons and so on. So it's not him that got me into it. But we go on holiday. You know, we went to Belgium last year. There isn't a lot to do. You're in like a, you know, a chalet or something like that. There's a TV. We don't bring video games or anything else. So every night we'd sit outside in the nice, you know, wherever. We'd get a table, a couple of chairs, and we'd play Uno for hours and hours and hours, and it's just the most fun time because we're all just having a laugh and a joke, making fun of each other.
Yeah.
Maybe have a couple of drinks, or whatever, and just chat crap and just have a laugh and just have fun. Some people might be cheating occasionally and get caught, and it's just absolutely ridiculous over a ridiculous card game. An absolutely stupid card game. Uno is ridiculous. But, when you get somebody picking up, and everybody like makes them pick up all the time, and they've got to handle like 40 cards because we always have multiple decks in one. Somebody with a handle like 40 cards, and it's just like hilarious then that you make them pick up a couple more. And it is just that interaction where you don't have to think about it too much, and there's not too much strategy or which buttons you're pressing.
Like, don't get me wrong. A lot of people argue at board games and card
especially
games.
Especially Monopoly. Oh my God, the amount of fights that have started over Monopoly. Jesus Christ.
But there's a very fine line of there's a little bit too much history that can be brought up if the right argument happens. Yeah. And that is the type of that's the type of situation where you can go weeks without speaking to a family member or a loved one.
The same could be said about video games. When you're playing some like GTA and you're just chatting as you're driving around, we've upset a certain person that then logs off and doesn't come back for a while because we've gone on with the same joke again and again and again. He got upset with it. So, any situation where you're interacting with people, you can do that with the little in-jokes and the little digs at people. Batman. It's like it's.
I was about to say it,
but because you're just friends and you have a laugh and a joke with each other, and some people take it, too personally at times, and when it's not meant in that way. But that's just people. But I think today's society, because everyone's reliant on mobile phones and emails and text messages and everything else, they're not used to doing that. So, I always think as a family, we always try and get together and play board games. So Jack loves playing Monopoly as well. So we're always doing stuff like that. And there's another game we play quite a lot. It's called Seen It.
Oh,
it's a board game with a DVD, and you get all movie clips and stuff. I just bought a new version. I was out the other day. That's the brand new one, but you get the board and everything else, but instead of CD, it's online and app driven. So you get newer movies, because obviously Seen It is quite a few years old now, so it's all older movies, but that's all new movies and stuff on it. It's like brilliant. But I have so many versions of that. I have the original Seen It, I have the deluxe Seen It, I have the 007 Seen It, Harry Potter Seen It, Twilight Seen It, don't ask me why. What other ones? Marvel Seen It. I've got loads of them. Friends. Got loads and loads of different versions of Seen It, because it's such a good fun game. I've got a music one as well. Oh, there's loads. It's just so good. It's, I love movies and music and everything else, so I usually do quite good. Most people won't play most of them with me, though, which is kind of sad.
Oh, I'll give you a run for your money. At the moment, just off topic quickly, me and my girlfriend have got an entire list about 40 pages long, full of films that she has surprisingly not watched. I'm getting her into the old ones, like the original King Kong, Tarantula, and then we're going up to Jason and the Argonauts, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and then we're coming up
Life
to like
of Brian.
Current
Batman, stuff for Life of Brian as well. Oh my God.
Oh God.
Release Brian.
Definitely.
He's a wobber and a rapist.
Yeah, that's
and a
on the list.
Oh, just
either way, but the thing is with board games over against computer games, obviously computer games is the now, goddamn board games are the past. But I would usher and push board games and tabletop on anyone who hasn't even tried it before.
100%.
Like, mate, guys, you're missing out on so much fun.
They work for people that aren't into video games. Like, my mum has never been into video games, but she'll play board games, and we always have done. So it's an easy way for people to get into gaming, because it is still gaming. It's interactive with other people. There's rules to be followed. There's a certain amount of chance and luck involved. So it's a kind of, for many of us, it's a gateway into video games, because we had board games in Dungeons and Dragons and Warhammer 40,000 and everything before there was really computer games, before there was an internet, definitely. So it leads one into the other. I was playing like games on the Spectrum based on Games Workshop games. There was one called Dark Future, which is a really weird game that's based around cars. So imagine like Mad Max and that sort of thing. You get a car and you put all different weapons on it and armor, and you kind of race around a road against other people and that sort of thing. You could have bikes as well. But the way the original like board game was, or tabletop game, is you had these road sections that you just randomly pick up the next one, so you never knew what direction the road would be going next. And then when you run out, you get them from the back and put them on the front, and you'd be driving around trying to destroy like the other person's car. It was similar to like Necromunda and all that, and you'd get damage and all that, but it was cars. And they did a version of it on the Spectrum as well, but they didn't call it that. They called it Battle Cars or something. But it was the same game, but it was kind of a computer game. So they did a lot of that kind of thing back in the day to try and expand like Games Workshop into the computer. Obviously, they've tried to do it pretty unsuccessfully for most games, because let's be honest, the ones we've been playing lately have not been very good, apart from Space Marine, which is good. But the Space Hulk, Vermintide, and all that were absolute trash.
No. Yeah, I mean,
trash.
the one that I've been enjoying, you've given it a go, I believe, is Aliens Dark Descent. It's tabletop gaming, but in a computer game form.
Yeah,
It's very fun after you get to a certain. Once you get to a certain
but
point,
for me, it
gets
doesn't.
repetitive.
It kind of feels like a weird hybrid, because it doesn't quite feel like the tabletop. And the biggest problem I have with it never feels like it's Alien at all. If it had been somewhere else, they've done zombie ones. It's exactly the same, only the zombies look like aliens. They don't act like aliens. It doesn't feel like aliens. That's the thing that gets me. I'm not a big fan of the kind of go to an area, build up all your defenses, and then another wave comes, and then you buy something else and go to the. I just find that dull. It's not. It's kind of like there's not enough story driven, but there's not enough action driven either. It's kind of a weird in the middle kind of thing that it's not leaning enough into any of those directions. There's not enough action for it to be like Alien versus Predator or something like that, where you're constantly like going around the corridors and getting the atmospheric and like first person, going against aliens and predators and marines and all that. They've not quite got that far. They've also not gone the kind of story driven like Alien Isolation, where you don't have guns and it's all about the story and getting to the next area and avoiding it. It's none of that. It's just build this, shoot them, build this, shoot them. It's like World War Z. I couldn't stand that either. It's a similar sort of thing.
All right, then. In that case, considering that time's of the essence now, let's head back to that question of those three that I gave you, the options. What's your favourite between interactivity on, board games, computer games? Which one do you prefer to do? Which one would you recommend to people to start off? And what's your favourite board game and computer game?
That's where it becomes difficult, because it's very much on situation, because I tend to not hang around with too many people. So board games, I love board games. I love Warhammer 40,000, and I'd love to get into more. I'm slowly getting Jack into it, but it's the cost and the time and the space. There's a lot of involvement to get back into Warhammer 40,000. You need an army, and they're expensive. You need the rule book, that's expensive. You need the army book, that's expensive. You need the paints, that's expensive. So there's a big barrier to that. I do luckily have a couple of like Dungeons and Dragons board games that are similar to like Hero Quest, but a little bit more advanced. So I've got those, but once again, you need more than two people. So we don't tend to do that often. Monopoly, we play like my parents and other people like that. So we get to do that. And obviously, if it's just me and Jack, we'll play Scenic, because it's quite good two-player. So it does all depend on the people you've got around you and the people you have access to. Whereas like video games are easy because you don't have to be close to somebody else. You can play, a video game with somebody the other side of the world, and it's fine.
Yeah.
So from the most part, I think video games are better for where I currently am in my life, because I don't tend to bother outside of work, people from work type of thing. I'm kind of alone. I don't like being around people all that much. People just annoy me. So video games for me at the moment are a better option, because I don't have to have people in my house and get all that set up. If you're playing something like Warhammer 40,000, you're not probably going to finish that in a day, or Dungeons and Dragons, and then you have to have it set up for the whole time, or you just finish early, and that's frustrating. So there's a lot of that as well. If you can't dedicate the time and the space to it and the money, then it's difficult to do those. Whereas a video game, you can get a decent video game for like 10 quid. Or, as we keep talking about, we have the different game passes where you get lots of games to play, like we're going to be doing a lot more of, like we are doing with Dying Light. So you get that experience without having to put all the money and the space. It's easy to just kind of jump in and jump out of. With the other ones, you have to like block a weekend for it. That's, I think, where the trouble is.
I mean, to be fair, with the summer coming nearer, because obviously me and you spoke about me potentially coming to meet you for the first time during Easter, and Easter's like right around the goddamn corner. It ain't happening. Yeah. But this summer, I will try and sort something out where I can. Well, us two should try and sort something out, because I'll bring my Resident Evil 1 tabletop game with me. Because you can do a solo playthrough on that game. You can play as Jill. Before you know it, you've found Chris. You found Rebecca,
exactly that sort of thing. I do like. So I played certain Dungeons and Dragon type things where you can do solo. Even with like basic cards, you can play like solitaire and stuff.
Solo campaigns,
which is
great.
Really good. It's something I do like about that. Oh, definitely, that sort of thing is really good. But once again, it's just like the advantage with like video games at the moment. It's all already set up. I just have to sit down and I'm on it. If I'm doing a board game, I need to make sure that the table is clear and get it all out and unpack it all from the box, get it all set up. So it's probably like 20 minutes initial setup before I can start. And if I wanted to do it after work, or by the time I've had food, set it up and everything, I'm not starting till probably 7 o'clock. And then factoring in the time to put it away, that's where
it... this is where I've said, and I will always try and make every grown-up who doesn't game understand that computer games isn't like how it used to be. An hour, you've got an hour to play your game. An hour back with like, I'd say Metal Gear Solid, you can do a lot in an hour. Yeah. But these days with a computer game, an hour, you have logged on and you have done your necessities at the hub and you're ready to set off to do your original plan.
That's the trouble.
That's an hour.
If you look at stuff like GTA and Destiny and things like that, there's always the daily stuff you want to do, especially like GTA. There's you could spend 2 hours doing all your daily stuff, making sure your business is running before you do anything else and do any kind of other content, like some of the new story missions if you've just bought a new property. And there's story missions go with it. No, I've still got to do the agency. I started that, but then they keep releasing more stuff, and I haven't got a chance to finish it because there's so many other things.
I feel sorry for people that coming up into the world, and their parents are like, "Oh, you've got an hour, 2 hours, an hour to 2 hours." It's nothing these days for computer
the games are so big as well, aren't they?
The same can be said for board games or tabletop. By the time you've set everything up, you're having dinner, brushing your teeth, going to bed.
And that's the trouble with a lot of kids, especially. Like, the only space you have available is the dining room table, but you have to do it around everybody else eating and things like that. So it becomes difficult having something that was set up. Luckily, my mum was always quite understanding with that, and sometimes we have set up for a couple of days on the dining room table when we're doing wargaming, because that was just the nature of it. But that's the biggest trouble.
When I bring a little me into the world, I'm always going to make sure that there is no console, no iPad, no technology that they can use to enjoy themselves with until they're close to like teenagehood. I want them to brought up to interact with people.
Good luck
use
with
their
that.
imagination.
Like, oh my god, he won't shut up. I just need to break. Play with this. It's like, I'm not going to give my kids chocolate. He won't shut up. Have some buttons. It's very different what you think, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and with all the best intention in the world, it's a lot more difficult, especially since you'll be on your phone, or tablet or something else. That's the trouble we have, especially these days, is that every person, no matter what age now, is stuck on their phone pretty much 24/7. And it'd be very difficult to have a little kid, you go, no, this is mine, you can't. And they're like, well, how is that fair on the kid then? If you're on it all the time, well, how's that going to be fair? And teaching them to use it only at certain times, and you've got this amount of time you can use it. Luckily, with games on iPads and so on, they tend to be quite short, and you can just sort of set time limits on it, and it doesn't matter too much.
The whole principle of what I said is try and get them out into the world to interact, to enjoy physicality instead of being slouched over and squared eyes. I want young people to understand what not necessarily me, but more for your case, you get to speak to people, meet people, plan weekends in advance. Because I've just found out as of today that sometime during the summer, I think June or July, I'm going up to Oxford for 4 days to do some tabletop board gaming, which is why I was like, do you know what? Scrap my original topic. We'll talk about computer games, board games.
I used to actually
tabletop.
help run a local gaming club for kids. One of my friends I used to work with by the name of Chris. We, used to do a lot of war gaming between us, and he lived in like a housing estate, and they had like a hall there and stuff. We decided, because a lot of the kids would get into trouble, and kids are like breaking the cars, whatever else. We started an actual 40k war gaming club and a bit of Warhammer as well, and did that in the hall. And we met up a couple of times a week, and we teach them how to play it, and they all, we brought stuff they could use, and they started getting their own and teach them to paint. And we did all that because I actually worked for Games Workshop for a little bit as well. So, I was doing all that kind of side of it, and it was really good. It was nice to have that group of people. And, we went up to Golden Demon one year and entered that, and I've been to Warhammer tournaments and all that back in the day. So we used to do all that kind of thing. And, some of the kids would come with us, or it would just be us going up. And that was quite good to be part of like a local group. And I think that's where it works really well, is if you can get a group of like-minded people. I did it when I was in school. We had a Dungeons and Dragons club. We met in the local library. They let us use one of the back rooms that had a table. We do that, and that I think is the best way to kind of get into it, is having a group of people, whether it's family or neighbors. If you can get those people together for just normal board games, just have a gaming night. You can do it where you're playing on the old Wii or something, and just have a gaming night where you get together and do something fun and different, that you get to chat to people, have a bit of a laugh, a bit of banter. That's what it's really about. Luckily, I grew up doing that. So, and I find it easy to just sit in a room and play games with people. I do that all day. It doesn't matter if it's online, on a board, cards. Doesn't matter. I'll play anything with anyone at any time, because that's how I grew up. And I agree. That's what needs to happen. Like Jack. He loves his video games, but he also loves the gym, and he loves outside. And, he's kind of got a bit of all of that, which is quite good. So, I think he's done well to do all that.
Anyways, mate, we've come up to our
It
time.
is an hour indeed.
Yep. Well, this was a brilliant chat. I love this chat. It's a bit of old, new, now and future.
Yeah, it's nice to just kind of chat about stuff rather than anything sort of too in depth all the time, and just kind of chat about things that we enjoy, because it kind of makes it easier, doesn't it? Then we can just kind of have a rant. Like I said, we could have a big old rant about Games Workshop and the prices and what they've done to the game, or what Bungie have done to Destiny. We could have several hour chats about that kind of thing. But it's nice to kind of just get a few things out there.
Yeah. Anyway, we should just end it there, mate. I need to get cracking. I've got some food to cook.
Indeed.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been On a Storyteller's Night. You can find myself on YouTube, Assassino998240, and the same on Twitch with the at the beginning.
And again, Nathan, you can find me on YouTube and Wasn't My Fault, or on Twitch as Nukami.
Thank you, and goodbye.
Bye-bye.